The bell above the diner door jingled softly as she wheeled herself in, the familiar sound somehow louder today. Jenna kept her gaze low, trying not to meet anyone's eyes. She wasn't looking for trouble. She never was. She just wanted to eat her pancakes and maybe enjoy a quiet moment. But even before she reached the booth tucked in the far corner, she could feel the stares. The place wasn't full, just a few scattered patrons and a group of men near the counter wearing worn-out denim leather vests and loud laughter, the kind that didn't come from joy, but from dominance. Biker types, the kind that marked their territory with noise and size. Jenna tried to pretend they weren't there, but they noticed her. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them called out, leaning back in his stool like he owned the place. "Need some help walking to your table?" The other two chuckled. The one with the skull tattoo on his neck let out a mocking whistle. Jenna didn't respond. She kept rolling her chair slowly toward the booth in the back. Her hands shook slightly on the wheels, but her face was blank. She'd practiced this expression, one of distance, detachment. If you didn't react, they usually got bored, but not today. She deaf too? The second biker said loudly, nudging the first. "Or just stuck up?" Their laughter echoed through the small diner like nails scraping glass. The young waiter, a boy who couldn't have been more than 19, stepped over awkwardly, holding a menu in both hands like it was a shield. Sir, please?" "Nah, it's cool," the man with the skull tattoo, Jake, said, lifting his coffee cup and grinning. "We're just having fun. It's a free country, right?" Jenna reached her booth and gently parked her chair, trying to block them out. But her ears couldn't unhear. Her chest tightened. Her appetite vanished, but she opened the menu anyway, eyes scanning words she didn't read. Jake raised his voice again. "Peace, huh?" he said mockingly. "You think life gives peace to weaklings? You're in the wrong place, girl." Jenna lowered her head further. Other customers started to shift uncomfortably in their seats. One couple glanced over, whispered, and left. The young waitress who had taken Jenna's order before looked to the manager in the back, but he was on the phone, distracted. No one stepped in. The air thickened. The bikers weren't yelling. They weren't touching her. But the poison in their words was felt by everyone in the room. Jenna hadn't done anything wrong. She was just there. But to some people, being different was enough. She stared at the table. Her hands sat in her lap. Not a word came from her mouth. And then, just when it seemed like the tension might finally pass, a new sound filled the room. The bell above the diner door rang again. Everyone looked. A tall black woman stepped inside, her presence immediate. She wore a leather jacket that shimmered in the overhead lights and boots that made a quiet thud with every step. Her hair was tied back, and there was a cold, calm focus in her eyes. She didn't speak, didn't smile. She scanned the room like she was reading it. Jenna looked up. Their eyes met, and for the first time that morning, a flicker of relief passed across her face. The woman, Carmen, walked straight to Jenna's table, placed a gentle but protective hand on her shoulder, and turned toward the men. "That's your entertainment. For the day?" Carmen's voice was low but firm. "Bullying a teenage girl in a wheelchair?" Jake blinked, caught off guard. His smirk flickered. "What's it to you, lady?" Carmen didn't answer with words right away. She reached into her coat and pulled something out. A badge. She dropped it on the table with a soft thud. Lieutenant Carmen Lewis. Internal Affairs. The diner fell silent. Carmen's eyes didn't leave the bikers. "And you just harassed a federal contractor's daughter." Jake's grin disappeared. "That's Jenna Blackwell," Carmen continued. "Her mother is the woman building your town's veteran housing project. You know, the one everyone's been praising." One of the bikers shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't just cross a line today," Carmen said. "You stomped on it." Jenna looked up again, not with fear this time, but with gratitude. Carmen wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. Her presence alone shifted the energy of the room. The silence was heavy. Then, slowly, hands began to rise. People who had been pretending not to notice. A man near the window lifted his phone. A teenage girl at the corner booth said, "I recorded it." The waitress stepped forward, voice shaking but strong. I saw everything. They wouldn't leave her alone, treated her like trash. Jake opened his mouth to protest, but Carmen held up a finger. You know what happens when a federal contractor files harassment charges, she said. You get a black mark that follows you. You won't get work, won't get hired. You won't even pass a background check for a delivery job. The men stood frozen. Jake muttered something under his breath. We didn't mean anything. Carmen stepped closer. Save it. You've got 60 seconds to leave this diner before I call this in. No one argued. The bikers grabbed their things and shuffled out, their boots suddenly too loud, their swagger gone. Jenna watched them go, not with anger, not with revenge in her eyes, just quiet dignity. Carmen sat beside her. You handled that with more grace than most people would, she said. Jenna smiled faintly. Thanks. I just wanted to be invisible. Carmen shook her head. Never dim your light for anyone. You've got your mother's courage. Around the room, people started to relax. The tension melted. The young waitress came back to the table, holding a slice of pie on a small plate. For the bravest girl in the room, she said with a smile. Jenna's eyes watered a little. Carmen gently patted her hand. And just as the scene began to settle, a new tension quietly entered. A sleek black motorcycle pulled up outside the diner. The engine shut off. Through the window, a tall figure climbed off the bike, removing a helmet slowly. It wasn't a cop. It wasn't a biker either. But it was someone who clearly wasn't here for pancakes. Carmen's gaze sharpened. Jenna noticed too. The door didn't open right away. But when it did, everything would change again, and, this time, Karma wouldn't be walking in alone. The door creaked open slowly and all eyes turned. The diner, moments ago settling into a hum of quiet chatter, stilled again. The man who stepped inside was hard to read at first glance. Tall, lean, dressed in a black shirt and dark jeans, with a leather jacket slung over one shoulder. His face wasn't familiar to most, but there was something about the way he carried himself, like someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. He didn't say a word. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Jenna and Carmen. Then he walked straight toward them, boots clicking against the tile floor, measured and deliberate. Carmen tensed. Jenna watched him closely, unsure whether to brace herself or feel curious. The man stopped at their table, looking directly at Carmen. His voice, when it came, was low but steady. Didn't mean to interrupt, just wanted to check on her. Carmen narrowed her eyes. You know her? He nodded once, shifting his gaze to Jenna. We met a few months ago, VA hospital. I was in rehab. She was volunteering there. Jenna blinked, trying to place him. Then her expression softened. You were the one with the service dog. I've still got him, he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Name's Radar. Jenna gave a quiet nod. I remember. You had a limp then. I still do, he said. Just hide it better. Carmen relaxed just slightly but kept her guard up. Name? Cal, he answered simply. Cal Monroe. Jenna looked at Carmen, offering a small, subtle sign of reassurance. He's okay. He was kind. The tension eased a bit, and Carmen motioned to the seat across from Jenna. Cal slid in, careful not to crowd her. You always this popular? He asked gently. Jenna gave a weak laugh. Only when trouble finds me. Cal's face darkened a bit. I saw what happened. I was parked outside, engine off. Didn't want to barge in unless I had to. I had it handled, Carmen said, her tone not defensive, just matter of fact. Cal nodded respectfully. No doubt. Around the diner, the atmosphere was shifting again. Whispers, curious looks, a mix of guilt and admiration in the eyes of those who had stayed quiet earlier. The waitress returned, this time with water for Cal. Her hand trembled just slightly, as if she was still rattled from what had almost escalated. Carmen leaned back slightly, but her eyes never lost that watchfulness. So, she said, turning to Jenna, what brings you out here alone? Jenna paused. I needed space. It's been rough lately. Mom's been buried in work with the housing project. The pressure's getting to her. People don't always want change, even when it helps, Cal added. Especially when it helps people they've been told not to care about. Jenna nodded. The town's split. Half of them want the project done yesterday. The other half think bringing in veterans with PTSD or disabilities is dangerous. Her voice lowered. Some of them think I'm dangerous. Just for existing. Carmen's jaw tightened. That's not going to stand. Cal leaned forward, slightly, his voice gentler now. What they did today, it's not just about you. It's about the fear they carry. They see something they don't understand and they strike out. It's not an excuse, but it's the pattern. Jenna looked at him, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. So what do I do? Stay home? Hide? Cal shook his head. No, you stay visible. You keep showing up. That's how you win. Outside the diner, a pickup truck rolled slowly down the street. Carmen noticed. Her posture shifted again. You expecting anyone? She asked Jenna. No. The truck passed, but Carmen kept her eyes on it until it disappeared. Something didn't sit right. Inside, the tension had turned into reflection. Cal told them a little more about himself, how he'd been injured overseas, how his leg never healed properly, how he'd struggled afterward. Jenna listened, and slowly the pieces started to connect. He wasn't just someone passing through. He understood her in a way most people never could. But it wasn't just a heartwarming moment. Something else was building. That night, after Carmen left and Cal offered to walk Jenna home, strange things started happening. A flyer had been taped to the front of the diner. It read, "We don't want her kind here. No name, no signature. Just a message filled with quiet hate." The manager ripped it down and threw it away before Jenna could see it. But others did. The next morning, more appeared. On light poles. On her mother's car windshield. On a bench near the VA clinic. This wasn't just bullying anymore. It was coordinated, and Carmen knew it. By day 3, someone had thrown a rock through the office window at the construction site where Jenna's mother worked. The tension had fully grown into threat. Jenna tried to stay calm, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. Carmen dug into the security footage. Cal started quietly asking around town. It didn't take long before a pattern emerged. The bikers who had harassed Jenna weren't acting alone. They were part of something bigger, a group that had been resisting the veteran housing project from the start. Locals who saw the newcomers as a threat to their way of life. They called themselves keepers of peace. But all they did was create fear. They'd never done anything directly violent. Until now. Cal found their symbol carved into the rock thrown through the window. It matched graffiti behind the diner, faint but visible. Carmen took the information to local law enforcement, but the response was slow and lukewarm. Without a direct threat or a name, they said, there's not much we can do. But Carmen knew better. She'd seen how these things snowball. What started as whispers turned into paper threats, then property damage. The next step wouldn't be a flyer or a rock. It'd be something worse. So they decided to act. That night, Jenna stayed with her mother at the edge of town. Carmen and Cal planned a quiet patrol of the construction site, just in case. And just after midnight, headlights appeared at the edge of the property. Carmen shut off her flashlight. Cal motioned for her to stay low. 2 figures stepped out of the truck, hoods up. One held a canister, likely spray paint. The other carried a long pipe. They weren't there to vandalize. They were there to send a message. Cal whispered, "We can't let this go unanswered." Carmen nodded. "But we need to be smart." They waited. The men drew closer. The sound of footsteps on gravel echoed in the night. Then one of them said something that made Jenna's name clear. This was personal. Carmen stepped out from behind the pile of lumber. "Evening, gentlemen," she said calmly. The men froze. Cal followed, flashlight on. You've got about 10 seconds to explain yourselves, Carmen added. The men dropped the pipe and bolted. Carmen chased, but they vanished into the trees. The next morning, the local news reported an attempted break-in. No names, no photos, no details. But Jenna knew what it was. And for the first time, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt fire. Because this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about her mother, her community, the people who were supposed to be helped by that housing project. This was about everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. So when Jenna wheeled herself back into that diner a few days later, every head turned again. But this time, something had changed. She didn't lower her eyes. She didn't try to disappear. She was back, and she had a voice. But what none of them knew, not yet, was that someone else was watching too. Someone from behind the scenes. And they weren't just leaving flyers anymore. They were planning something bigger. And Jenna was right in the middle of it. It started with a letter, handwritten, folded neatly in an envelope with no return address. Jenna found it tucked in the spokes of her wheelchair one quiet morning. She unfolded it slowly, her fingers trembling just a bit. The message inside was brief. We're not done with you. Stop the project or we stop you. No name, no signature, just fear written in ink. Jenna showed it to Carmen right away. Cal came within the hour. They stood together at the kitchen table, the letter between them like a silent threat crawling into their day. Carmen had seen this kind of thing before. She'd worked cases where intimidation escalated fast, but this one was personal now, because it wasn't just a case. It was Jenna, and Carmen had grown to care for her like a niece she never had. Cal said little, but his eyes said everything. He'd fought for his country overseas. Now he felt like he was fighting for it right here, in his own backyard. He wasn't about to let Jenna or her mother face this alone. Meanwhile, the community was starting to shift. People were watching, some in support, others silent and waiting, unsure which way the wind would blow. The veteran housing project had become more than bricks and plans. It had become a symbol of progress for some, a threat for others. But Jenna didn't back down. At the next town meeting, she wheeled herself up to the front of the room and waited quietly until it was her turn to speak. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. People leaned in to hear her. I know not everyone wants change, she said. I know it scares people, but there are veterans out there with nowhere to go. Some of them are like my friend, Cal. They served, they gave, and now they're struggling. This project could give them a second chance just like I was given one. And if you think being in a wheelchair makes me weak, then you've never had to fight to be seen. The room was silent when she finished. No applause, no boos, just stillness. But a few heads nodded. A few eyes glistened. The mayor stood next. He cleared his throat, then simply said, "Thank you, Jenna," and sat back down. But even as things looked like they might turn, trouble returned, this time in broad daylight. The next day, as the construction crew worked on the foundation of the new housing center, a fire started. Small at first. Then it spread fast. Someone had doused the wood with gasoline. A crew member spotted the flames just in time. No one was hurt, but the damage was real. And so was the message. This was arson. This was war. That night, Carmen met with the town sheriff, behind closed doors. She demanded full protection for Jenna and her mother, round-the-clock watch at the site, and an official investigation into the threats. The sheriff, who'd once been slow to act, had seen enough now to realize this wasn't just vandalism. This was organized, and it had to stop. Meanwhile, Cal began working behind the scenes. He reached out to fellow veterans, men and women who owed nothing to the town but who understood what it meant to fight for the right to exist. Within 2 days, they arrived in quiet force, not armed, not loud, just present, helping rebuild, watching, standing guard. When the group behind the attacks tried again, this time attempting to cut the power lines at the site, They were caught red-handed by one of the veterans and held until authorities arrived. Among the attackers, one of the bikers from the diner. Another was the son of a local businessman who had publicly opposed the housing project. The town's mask had cracked. The news spread fast. Videos from the diner resurfaced. So did the flyers, now being examined as evidence in a formal case. Suddenly, the town wasn't just watching Jenna anymore, they were watching themselves, and many didn't like what they saw. As arrests were made and charges filed, the tone shifted. People who had stayed quiet began to speak up. A teacher wrote an op-ed praising Jenna's courage. A group of students from the local high school held a fundraiser for the housing project. Even the waitress from the diner started organizing a community day to paint over the hate graffiti and support the rebuild. And through it all, Jenna remained the same. Quiet, steady, brave. On the day the project finally resumed in full, Jenna stood beside her mother at the site entrance. Cal was there too, leaning slightly on his cane, radar lying at his feet. Carmen stood just behind them, arms crossed, a rare smile on her face. The mayor stepped forward to cut the ribbon, but before he did, he looked at Jenna. "This town owes you more than thanks," he said. "You showed us what real strength looks like." Jenna said nothing. She just nodded. The ribbon was cut. Applause broke out. Not everyone clapped, but most did. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned amber, Jenna sat alone on the diner's back porch. Cal joined her quietly, 2 sodas in hand. "You ever think this would end this way?" he asked, handing her one. She shook her head. "I thought I'd be forgotten. Just one more story people ignored." Cal smiled faintly. "You didn't just get remembered. You changed the story." She looked out across the town. Lights were coming on. Music floated from somewhere nearby. For once, the world felt still. Safe. "I was scared," she admitted. "But maybe courage isn't about not being scared. Maybe it's doing the thing anyway." Cal nodded. "That's what makes it real." A moment of silence passed between them. Then Jenna said, "They thought I was weak, that I'd break." Cal looked at her with quiet admiration. "But when the world tried to shame you..." Jenna finished the sentence with a smile. Karma walked in wearing leather, and for the first time in a long while, she laughed. The camera pulls back slowly, showing the diner behind them, the streets ahead, and the promise of something better. Not perfect, but better, and that was enough.